consider the increase in assessments as proposed. So we have Finance and Public Works at the table. So Mr. Sterling, Mr. Diaz, welcome, and our wonderful finance staff, our director, Destiny Borbick. So welcome to all, and I think we're leading with Mr. Sterling.
Yes, sir. I'd like to start off with echoing what Alvin Diaz mentioned earlier. This was a huge undertaking, and we couldn't have done it without finance and econ and Lisa and Destiny. With that, we'll get started. Overview, we have 44 districts, assessment districts, LADs in Hanford. They are plotted out on the map. 28 LADs will increase their assessments by 3%, the CPI. 10 LADs will not be increased. We balloted 6 LADs this year, with 4 receiving majority protest, and the public hearing for the final 2 set for 7/21, and that would be Quail Run and Portofino. We have, sorry, I don't know if it's my glasses, so it looks a little blurry. We have all the LADs mentioned into the year fiscal 25-26, and then projected for 26-27. And like I said, it's a little blurry there. If you have any questions there, we can answer them now.
Is there a plan for Silver Oaks?
Yes, we have some plans. There's some lighting issues out there. We have plans in place to
they have
improve
a very
those.
very generous fund balance.
Yes, they do, and we're going to look to do some vast improvements out there. Deficient LED strategies, as we mentioned before, we currently have 12 LEDs that are deficient. The assessments are lower than the maintenance and operational cost. The majority of the deficient LEDs do not have the annual CPI escalator. They're typically our older LEDs. The service levels in deficient LEDs have been adjusted to try and meet and match the funding and the district funding. 6 LEDs have been balloted with minimal success. These districts are currently all receiving minimal maintenance. Currently, we have some that are just receiving maintenance once a month by city staff. Only the property owners within each district with no CPI escalator can increase their assessments through balloting. We'll touch on landscape levels of service with the new contract. The city of Hanford prefers the highest level of service for all areas of the quadrant. Most areas of the quadrants have funding that can support the highest levels of service. However, there are rare instances when available funding in particular quadrants will require us to reduce the level of service out there. That area by reducing level of service frequency for that area. Therefore, the city of Hanford reserves the right to assign service level of less frequency, B or C, to specific areas of a quadrant when the city deems necessary. The city will provide the contractor with a 30-day advance written notice listing the area and square footages for which service shall be reduced an effective day of service reduction. The city will also have automatic reductions with the contract payment amount for those specific areas according to the table below, which shows the reduction from level A to level B to level C. Questions?
Why isn't level C, because it's once per month, is it like 50%? I mean,
once per month. There's still, imagine not mowing your lawn for a month. It takes a lot longer, so there's still a lot of time that's accrued. Takes them longer to mow that area. It hasn't been done in a month.
Gotcha.
And our recommendation, as you can see there, is adopt resolution 2636R, approving the annual engineer's report and intention to levy and collect assessments as outlined, and set a public hearing date of July 21st, 2026 to afford affected property owners an opportunity to give oral testimony and submit written comments regarding the increase of assessments as proposed. And with that, we're open for any questions.
Council, any questions?
I just want to say the engineer's report was very thorough and very well done. So thank you, Alvin, and staff for everything that you did, because it's great.
Any other questions? Okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion as presented by staff.
I'll be honored to make a motion to approve agenda item B, general business item B.
We have a motion by Councilman Payton.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilwoman Regan. Madam Clerk. Item passes 5-0. Thank you all.
Thank you, Council.
Okay, next item under general business is C, Utilities and Engineering, the presentation on the wastewater rate study and authorization to proceed with the proposed, or Proposition 218 process and set a hearing date and time for August 18th, 2026 to 7 p.m. for the proposed wastewater rate increase. So, Mr. Centeno, welcome. You're the one that's I don't know who's making the presentation tonight?
Frank will be.
I think Frank's got the binder open, so.
There's a few of us. Right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Frank Centeno, Utilities and Engineering Director, City of Antwerp. So, just want to start, first of all, with some introductions. Sitting with me here at the table and playing a role in the presentation, Jason Rodriguez, Wastewater Utilities Manager. Joining us remote is Allison Lehovich from Lehovich and Sang. She'll be running the Prop 218 presentation. And then we also have Christian Sprunger of NHA Advisors. This item follows the award of the design-build contract to Optera for the wastewater treatment facilities, energy upgrades and improvements that was authorized by the City Council back last month at the May 19th meeting. Being able to completely move forward with the project is contingent upon proceeding with the Prop 218 rate increase process and subsequently procuring outside bond funding. So tonight's agenda, these are the three main topics for the remainder of the presentation. I will provide a brief background, then followed by the Prop 218 presentation by Allison, and then followed by NHA Advisors, and then finally with a slide on next steps. So before handing it over to L&T, I have a few slides here that will provide some context into the fees and a summary background to what's going into these fees. The fees are comprised of these three general items: operating expenses, the wastewater treatment facility project that was just approved last month, and then the wastewater-related CIPs. Operating expenses, they're the day-to-day costs to run the wastewater division: salaries, utilities, supplies, equipment. And the fees will are set up such that it provides the debt coverage to pay for the wastewater treatment plant facilities project, and then fees to cover again the wastewater related CIPs. So the second leg to the stool, you've seen this budget summary already. As a reminder, this is the budget summary for the wastewater treatment plant project. The number here of importance is the estimated amount to be financed. That's the $59,499,139 million. That is the amount going towards to be bond funded, but covered through the fees. And then the CIP has been updated to include these identified deficiencies, deferred maintenance of aging infrastructure. The big ticket item here is pipeline rehabilitation or replacement, and that line item alone, the pipeline replacement or rehabilitation maintenance program, that is really the meat and potatoes of any sort of municipal sewer maintenance program. And that is completely lacking. And it's been so for many years. And as you can see, the CIP update will represent a significant investment over the next 5 years. The line graph here shows the 5-year totals for each of those approved budgets. The fiscal year 23-24, 24-25 had a $7.5 million CIP. That's the 5-year totals. The current budget that we're in now, 25-26, 26-27, has almost $16 million budgeted for wastewater. That would be again for 5 years. And this CIP has been updated to increase that amount up close to $27 million as part of this update. And that represents an approximate $11 million increase. And through this process, I know staff worked really diligently to identify. We're looking forward in 5 years, and this rate fee is supposed to carry us through the next 5 years. So we worked really diligently to really identify those big ticket items and what those needs will be, and take into account also identified deficiencies in our current master plans.
Really quickly, and I'm sorry to interrupt on that. When we're talking about the pipeline or the rehabilitation or replacement, is that solely on the wastewater treatment facility, or is that anywhere through town that we have some aging infrastructure that transports the wastewater to the facility that's going to be able to? Because I didn't think about it until now, and so I didn't know. So I'm just asking. So
that is the citywide network. So it includes all sewer conveyance pipelines. Mm-hmm. These are the major trunks. This is also the collectors that run within the neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods as well. Just over 200 miles of pipeline. I think that's a great talking point when we have members of the community of why we're raising rates, but we have aging infrastructure throughout the whole entire city that we need to handle. And I think that's a good point too. And so I'm glad, because I didn't even think about that, and I think that's a great point to, hammer home, because this is a tough decision. So diving in just a little bit deeper, next slide here. This slide now details the revised wastewater CIP. And this identifies the deficiency type projects, as well as the increase in infrastructure maintenance. The changes in the CIP are in red. What's existing is remaining as black. So, and once again, I mean, this really represents a major investment in the city's sewer infrastructure for the next 5 years. And again, I wanted to point out of note is the pipeline. And that is identified as annual sewer maintenance improvement project. So the way this is laid out is that we would do the engineering the first year, and then construction the second year. Engineering, construction, it kind of leapfrogs back and forth, so that you can combine into a larger CIP project. Take advantage of economies of scale and whatnot. And these are larger projects. And so they do take the time to engineer, as well as to coordinate with Russ's paving projects, coordinating these with the utilities. There's a lot of work that goes into it, also coordinating, notifying the residents as we go in there and we either rehabilitate or replace these pipelines. Property owners are responsible for their laterals that connect to it. So that's an opportunity for them to make their repairs ahead of us or during that process. This also includes rehabilitating 3 major sewage lift stations. Those are the deficiency projects, and those deficiencies were identified in the current master plan that we're currently working on. This also covers the contingency for the wastewater treatment project. It replaces aging solar components to the solar panels out at the plant. It also replaces the third and final headworks internal lift. 2 of them have already been before council, and also it rehabilitates the treatment plant's facility drying beds. So diving in just a little deeper here, and to your point, Councilman Aiden, on pipeline repairs. This chart here shows what we're proposing as part of this CIP. We're recommending $1.5 million per year of rehabilitation or replacement work right now, and we're increasing it from $1 million per year to $1.5 million per year. So the industry recommendation is to replace 1% of our total pipeline per year. So if we have 200 miles of pipeline, that would be 2 miles of pipeline per year. The cost on that is really huge, and we have not done this before. So this makes a lot of sense. Let's start here. At, something manageable right now. This will help us to then assess further the conditions of the network citywide. We'll start with our video inspections. We'll start to be able to put together a more routine schedule, so that as we move forward in future years, we can then adjust what that project maintenance amount will be. So what we're recommending here is that we're set for the next 5 years. At the end of 5 years, then we'll revisit, what our needs will be, and eventually we'll start catching up. Perhaps maybe by year 20, we'll be catching up to that 1% per year.
Okay, so I can make sure I'm understanding, is that this is on a 450-year cycle, as you said. Like, we're all not going to be here. I'll place a bet on that. And I don't know what technology is, but from what you're saying on the graph, that we're going to be doing about 0.5 mile of infrastructure repair each year. Is that correct?
0.5 mile to perhaps closer to 3/4 mile. This is based most very conservatively, is that we're actually removing and replacing the pipe, the most expensive. I think there's a lot of pipe out there that's still salvageable, that we can perhaps perform more rehabilitative type approach, where we're just lining the inside and it's less intrusive, and we're saving a lot of costs at the same time. So we're saving those dollars for mature replacements. So there's a lot of strategies within the project itself to try to extend the useful life of our already aging infrastructure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Frank, I have a question. How much of the pipe needing to be replaced is because of subsidence?
None that I know of. It's all just aged. The life expectancy of a sewer pipe depends on the material and the quality of the workmanship when it was installed. It ranges anywhere from 50 to 100 years.
Okay, thank you. But Oh, wait, but whenever it says current budgeted is at 0.22%, which is half a mile per year, okay? What you're proposing is doing it a lot faster than that.
No, that is, that is
That's the current.
assuming
baseline.
that increase. We're at 1 million per year. We're proposing or calling it really current at 1.5.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I just had a question. What size pipe are we talking about?
So these pipes range anywhere from 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, 12, 14, 16, all the way up to, I think the largest is 42. So the lion's share of the work will really be done on the smaller pipes. So if there's no further questions for staff, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Allison.
All right. Good evening, City Council, members of the public. Next slide, please. So I did the last rate study. It was completed October 2023. And at that time, the wastewater fund was in pretty bad financial shape. That rate study heavily focused on covering operating costs and covering debt service costs. And at that time, the city did not have adequate wastewater reserves and really had very minimal capital improvement funding. Only about 7.4 million of projects. And so you can see that's very much less than the current proposed CIP of about 25 million or so. So at that time, the City Council approved a 5-year rate plan, three of the first year rate increases have already been completed. So the current rate is about $30.95 per single family dwelling. There is a proposed pre-scheduled rate increase that will go into effect in just a few weeks on July 1st, 2026, bringing the rate up to $32.50. And we are proposing an accelerated rate adjustment. The pre-programmed rate did have another increase proposed for next July 2027, bringing the rate up to $34.13. But given that we have the wastewater improvement project, we have the new debt service, and we have a new capital improvement plan, there's a need to reevaluate the rates and do a different rate adjustment over the next 5 years and supersede the July 1st, 2027 rate adjustment. Next slide, please. So for this revised rate analysis, we updated the customer billing information, how many customers you have, what revenues we're collecting. We also reviewed operating costs, the city's cash balances for the wastewater fund. That is one metric of the city's credit rating on the sewer fund, the amount of available reserves. And we are also looking to fund the about 26 million of capital improvement projects over the next 5 years. So when we think about why is a rate adjustment needed, it's not only for the new debt service of the $60 million financing for the wastewater treatment plant. It is a total new look at your sewer utility and reflecting the updated capital improvement plan. So the new wastewater treatment plant upgrade will provide some savings on energy costs due to the solar projects. We factored that in. We will also get some operational savings, about 1.16 million per year. But counter to that, we are looking at a range of different debt service and financing scenarios that will increase debt service costs about 4.15 to about 4.67, depending on some different options. So what we're looking at is what level do the rates need to increase to meet all these new and updated financial goals, cover the new debt service, and cover the new capital improvement costs. So we did develop 2 rate scenarios. Next slide, please. The rate scenarios are different in how the financing is structured, and our intent with this presentation is not to do a financing presentation, but to give you options on how the rates could be phased in over time. We did 2 scenarios, a high capitalized interest and a no capitalized interest scenario. Capitalized interest allows you to phase in debt service costs more gradually, but you do pay more over the term of the debt. The 30 years that the loan is outstanding, the city would pay higher interest costs overall, and so that would drive a higher rate increase in later years, but would mitigate rate impacts in early years. And then the opposite is true for scenario 2, where we're not paying capitalized interest costs. So we're not phasing in the debt service. There's more of an immediate term, higher cost debt service. But over the life of the debt, the 30 years that that debt is outstanding, it's a lower cost for the city. And so the ultimate difference is that option 2 saves the city about $8 million over 30 years. But there's a need to increase rates to a higher amount in the early years of the financing. And so we do have some slides that Christian from NHA will go over in more detail about how capitalized interest works, the benefits or disadvantages of capitalized interest. But it was a way to think about how the rates might be phased in over the next 5 years. So next slide, please. So as a reminder, in the prior rate study, we approved a series of rate adjustments. The next rate adjustment that's already pre-programmed in was already approved with the Prop 218 process, would go into effect this July 1st, and it would be a 5% rate increase. And there is a pre-programmed planned rate adjustment. So if City Council takes no action on raising rates, there is an already approved rate increase for next July of 2027 of an additional 5% rate increase. So what we are proposing is to supersede next July's rate adjustment and instead do the pre-planned rate adjustment for this July. So the rate adjustment goes into effect as scheduled in just a few weeks. And then on top of that, this new restructuring of the rates to finance the treatment plant would go into effect September 1st. And then get back on the July 1st schedule for the remaining years. So option 1, that's that the high capitalized interest scenario that does have the $8 million of financing costs additional over the 30-year term of the debt, is a 13.5% rate increase. So it's a few dollars a month rate adjustment. And so that is a very phased in approach. And then we also offered an option 2, which is no capitalized interest. So this option has a slightly higher initial rate increase, about $7 a month for that first September 1st rate adjustment. But over the 5-year period, if you look towards the last year of the rate adjustment, the rate is actually slightly less, and that is because the total debt service each year is actually less under option 2 in the later years due to that difference in financing costs with the capitalized interest. So that's the question for City Council is what level of rate increase do you feel is appropriate for the community, and is the extra financing charges related to the capitalized interest, worth it to kind of smooth out the rate adjustment? slide, please. But overall, City of Hanford's rates are affordable or reasonable for your geographic area. You're in the middle of surveyed agencies, so I looked at what is the single family rate for other local agencies. And your current rate is in the middle of surveyed agencies, and even with the 2 proposed rate adjustments, you would move, slightly higher than Delano, but less than, several others in this area. And we do expect most other agencies are doing rate adjustments as well. Most agencies do some level of rate adjustment each year. So as the City of Hanford increases rates over time, we would expect these other agencies to also be increasing rates. Next slide, please. So tonight, so I'll give a little overview of the schedule, and then we can talk schedule and next steps at the end of the presentation as well. Tonight we are asking for direction, either on option 1 or 2, or a different rate proposal. And if we are able to achieve consensus on a rate option, we can go ahead and move forward with printing and mailing the Proposition 218 notices of public hearing by July 2nd. There is a minimum 45-day waiting period, and so the earliest that the public hearing could occur would be August 18th. And if there is no majority protest, that first rate could go into effect September 1st. And as a reminder, under Proposition 218, it is a legal maximum rate that we are noticing to the public. And so each year, City Council could review the financial standing of the sewer utility and potentially adopt a lower rate than what we projected if financial conditions are better than we estimated. You just can't go above the maximum rate shown in the Proposition 218 notice. So I will go ahead and wrap up and pass it off to Christian with NHA.
Thank you, Allison. Good evening, City Council members.
Good evening.
I apologize. I'm having some sort of feedback issue on this line. Is it possible to mute the City Council Teams channel while we present? Oh, perfect. Okay. I don't hear the feedback anymore. Thank you for that. If anyone has a question, please unmute and stop me, and I'll stop talking. So this slide summarizes a net revenue pledge, and I'm going to walk through what it is and what the city would be covenanting to with bond investors as it finances this project. It's a fairly standard pledge. It would apply to really any type of financing that is secured by wastewater fund revenues. And so if you could advance the bullet points, please. Thank you. When an issuer sells bonds secured by a net revenue pledge, the issuer is covenanting to bond investors to essentially maintain net revenues equal to certain thresholds. It's called the debt service coverage requirement. A standard requirement is about a 125% threshold. The city's existing current minimum threshold is 120%. The calculation for this is shown there on the right side of the screen. And essentially the calculation is net revenues divided by debt service due in that year. And there's a way to derive each of those. The key thing to note is that the divisor for this is debt service, of course, due in that fiscal year. And the net revenues in the numerator is gross revenues less operating expenses. So capital expenses, PAYGO capital, is sort of excluded from this specific calculation. This is so bond investors can be sure that you're getting money in the door to pay your debt service due and your operations, and then, of course, PAYGO capital after the debt service is paid. Next slide, please. Great, yeah, and if you could advance the text, appreciate it. Thank you. So Allison mentioned potential for a capitalized interest option, option 2, which would have no capitalized interest, option 1 would have capitalized interest. And essentially the goal of this slide is to emphasize that the extent to which capitalized interest is a tool that some public agencies use to ease in the cost of capital projects. Of course, Financing a project itself is a strategy to align the cost of that project with its useful life, right? These long-term projects can be financed over a long term, so that cost is borne by not only ratepayers who enjoy today, but ratepayers in the future who enjoy the project benefit. The strategy behind delaying the beginning of repayment on a project, specifically repaying the beginning of debt service repayments, is really just a tool. The market in general doesn't have a negative view of it one way or another, provided it's done within reasonable constraints. And so the two scenarios that are in front of you, option one, which has some of the capitalized interest, and then option two with no capitalized interest, both of those scenarios are within the bookends of what the market would find acceptable in terms of how much you can defer the repayment without raising red flags. And so I think the key point to make, and Allison mentioned it during her presentation, the trade-off in play is that when you do not capitalize interest, you're essentially paying more in the next few years. And then if you do capitalize the interest, you pay less in the next few years. And I think that's going to be illustrated a little bit better on the next slide. But before we go there, I want to just say, what is capitalized interest? We've been using that term, want to define it clearly. When an issuer like the city, if the city elects to capitalize the first couple of interest payments, at the close of a financing, there is a fund that is set apart, that's funded out of the issuance, that is sized such to an amount to pay the interest payments for a certain period of time. It could be 6 months, could be a year, could be up to 3 years, 3 years being the typical maximum. And so that's what we're referring to when we say the use of capitalized interest is when you finance the project, if the city elects to go with capitalized interest, the city would not only fund the project, but there would be an additional fund that would be held by a trustee, and money in that fund would be used to pay semi-annual interest payments for a period of time. Next slide, please. All right, so this slide is thank you very much. This slide is going to summarize present value comparison and some of the considerations there. Allison mentioned in the scenario where we're modeling a capitalized interest is about a $7.5 million capitalized interest fund that's established. The cost of that, the difference in cost of that is about $8.8 million. If we look at cash flows over the future, it's important to remember that $1 today is worth more than $1 in 30, 40 years, right? And so in order to compare scenarios that have different amounts of cash flow over different times, what we do is we do a present value. So we're bringing all of those future cash flows, discounting them back to today's value. Of course, the discount rate you use is important because it has a direct impact on what that present value calculation is. In the analysis you see on the screen, we're comparing option one, which would be the capitalized interest scenario, and then option two, as shown on the screen, is a no capitalized interest scenario. And you can see there's a difference there between these two scenarios. In the first few years, there's higher debt service payments in the early years under option two, where you do not capitalize the interest. But then starting in year 4, which is 2030 in this and beyond, there's higher payments under the scenario where the city does capitalize the interest. And so the far right column, the orange column, is really illustrating what those present values are. And so you can see the negative numbers up front and then those positive numbers declining in the out years. The sum of that is circled there at the bottom of the bottom right of the orange column, that 575,587. Assuming a discount rate of 5.3%, which is tied to an estimated weighted average cost of capital, that 575 is the present value difference between the two options that are on the table before you tonight. So it helps to frame the difference in those present value terms, because it brings those cash flows to what's the cost in today's terms. Next slide, please. To summarize, the sewer fund currently has an A+ stable credit rating from S&P Global Ratings. The pie chart you see there illustrates the different rating criteria, the different subcategories within a general rating and how they're weighted. It's a little bit small, so I apologize for the size there. But the gist of it is that the blue series, all of those blue slices of pie in the pie chart, about 55% of the city's credit rating, A+ stable, is controllable, directly controllable by the city. The orange series there on the bottom, those are things that are generally outside of an issuer's control. And so when we advise clients on how to maximize their credit rating for a utility fund, we tell them, you know what, you should really focus in on those blue slices of pie. Those orange slices of pie are a little bit out of your control. And it's worth noting that the two biggest blue slices of pie there, the all-in coverage and the liquidity and reserves, each account for about 20%. So combined 40% of your overall credit rating. So when we're talking about the coverage, we're referring to that net revenue pledge that the city would make when it issues debt to maintain net revenues equal to a certain percentage, a certain coverage factor over the debt service due in that year. With respect to liquidity and reserves, that's all available wastewater fund cash and reserves that are available to pay debt service in the event of a shortfall in revenues. So a couple of thresholds that we're really looking closely at. On a cash front, having a cash and reserves balance equal to or greater than $5 million would bump the city into that $5 to $20 million range, that category. And so that $5 million is kind of a threshold. A $5 million balance below $5 million would be below that rating subcategory range. And then on the coverage front, coverage of 160% would move the city into a higher credit rating threshold, whereas coverage in a 140 to 150% range is a lower threshold. And you may be saying, hey, wait a minute, you were just talking about 120% debt service coverage requirement. Why are you referring to 140, 160, these other numbers? There's kind of two things to consider. There's the legal minimum, which is the city's 120. That's the minimum required coverage that bond investors require. And then there's a strategic amount of coverage to maximize your credit rating and to lower your cost of debt. And so that's those higher percentages that I'm referring to above the city's 120% legal requirement. That's the end of my slides, and I'll hand it over to Frank. Thank you.
Well, that pretty much wraps up the presentation, City Council. Next steps, as was already included in Allison's slides. Today we're looking for council's direction along with the selection of option 1 or 2. And of course, following that, then July 2nd, we would print and mail the Prop 218 notice of hearing. Then come back August 18th with the Prop 218 public hearing. At that point, notice of proceeds for the two firms would be issued. In September 1, absent a majority protest, year rates would go into effect. So I'm going to rewind it back to just go back to the options. So there's the options. Option 1 with capitalized interest, no capitalized interest is option 2. These are here for consideration, and or there's any questions for Allison or for Christian.
Gives council, I'll ask if anyone has any questions, but if you need a second to look at the graph or you know, processing what's been said, we can do that as well.
Just one quick question. In reading the staff report and seeing the $8 million that we would save by if we went to no capitalization, capitalized interest or capitalized interest, really over time, that's only $575,000 that we're saving.
Correct, because that $8 million at the back end is worth $575,000 today.
I'm just trying to wrap around my head just like justification, because it's easier to say, hey, we're saving $8 million, but that's really not the case. Or, I mean, we are saving $8 million, but what $8 million could buy is pretty much equivalent to the $575,000, if I'm understanding it correctly.
I'd phrase it as you're saving the ratepayers.
Yes, it's saving the ratepayers.
Yes, over the period of the term here,
The 30-year term.
yes, we are saving the ratepayers a total of $8 million.
Okay, I just wanted clarification, because when I was seeing both numbers, it's like, well, this is really the 575, but we're really saving them $8 million. Okay. In today's.
Correct, and that's by paying, or option one where option two where you're covering that capitalized interest.
And I appreciate in the tables that you're showing the annual increase, the monetary increase. Percentages are very hard for people to grasp, I think. And is that the percentage of my entire utility bill? Is it just the sewer? You know, when they hear out in the public, you know, like after this meeting, they'll say, oh, this is a 5% increase. They're thinking, or 30% increase. They're probably thinking the whole bill more than likely, as opposed just to that rate. So it puts it in perspective that whether we go capitalized or no capitalized, the increase is $4.39. And they could grasp onto what can I buy for $4.39, and what is that? How is that going to affect my budget? Or $6.50 a month, how is that going to affect my budget? So I appreciate that in the table, because I think that will be very clear to convey to our constituents.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in there and say, you know, I know this is one of those that's just difficult. This is the second time in my 4 years on the council that we're having this discussion. We had a discussion back in 2022, 23-ish time. You know,
Right when we came
right
on
when
council.
we came on,
yeah.
and we did a 5-year. Now, but I just for the record, so everyone kind of understands that we didn't know the needs that we know that are out there today at that time. But we still enforced the maximums over that, you know, over that 5-year plan, you know, to increase that. But, you know, we have so much need now and what we've previously all agreed to support with the upgrades in the wastewater treatment facility and everything that needs to be done. And we've tasked Jason, Mr. Rodriguez, to, you know, give us a plan to move forward, and Frank, and how we can get things where we need to have them, because, you know, prior to 23 or whatever, I think the last time it was done was 2011, if I remember right. So we went
15 years.
yeah.
It's 15 years ago, yeah.
A significant amount of time where, you know, it wasn't addressed, and then we had to address it because it was, you know, but now we're starting with the issues that we have with our wastewater treatment plant and the need to get that stuff updated and to move forward, because it's not going to get cheaper. We've already had those discussions. How if we keep pushing this down, it's just going to cost us more and more and more. So it's a challenge, and you know, I'm going to apologize to the public in advance. I mean, this is difficult, but in reality, we all know that there's been so much need and so much is required to be done. You know, it's just. You know, I look at I use the terminology, you know, do you just rip the Band-Aid off? And, you know, I don't want to spend more than we have to.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can keep it down for the ratepayers and saving some money. And, you know, I mean, I'm all in. So as far as I'm concerned, if, you know, you go with no capitalized interest or whatever, yeah, you know, the percentages are a little higher up front, but they reduce as they go down the line, and plus we're saving, you know, over the 30-year loan or 30-year bond, we're saving the city, you know, almost, you know, $8.5 million. So
Saving the city, the ratepayer.
the ratepayer. Well, no, but I mean, I'm just, yes, the ratepayer. Thank you. Yes. Even
Members of the
ratepayer-
city, the ratepayers of the
There's
The residents is what I
Residents would
meant.
be
Thank
better.
you. Yes, great
Yep.
comment.
I have a question for you. As we add more houses and grow, is there more chance of not, you know, how you guys said that that is the maximum? Is that based on, like, if we add another 4,000 or 5,000 houses, is that based on those four? I mean, if we have 4,000 or 5,000, let's say we add 5,000 houses, and they are all using the services, and they're paying the same rate. Are these numbers based on what it costs to run the facility, or if it's running more sewage through it, is it going to take and cost more? I mean, what are the chances of the rate not being this high?
I mean, this pays for our, I mean, this,
Should I take that question?
I don't care who does.
I think Allison.
go ahead, Allison.
Lahovitz.
Okay, and how is the feedback issue on the sound?
Sounds great.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so we did the rate projection with a minimal, very conservative level of growth. So if you do have a lot more ratepayers, thousands and thousands more coming in over the next 5 years, the benefit there is that it's covering, that you're spreading fixed costs over a larger amount of ratepayers. So that would be less of a rate increase than what we've projected here. We always try to be pretty fiscally conservative on the rate studies. So if you do have a high level of growth, that would be more customers helping your economy of scale.
So right now we're at what, 19,000? Pretty close to 19,000. So these numbers were derived a higher number than 19,000, if I'm understanding Allison, correct?
Is that correct, Allison?
So 19,000 being the current number of ratepayers.
Correct.
So
Yeah, so it's based on 19,000 and just like 1 or 2% growth per year.
My thought, whenever I'm looking at this here, I would rather save the city the $8 million. I know that theoretically it is, like you said, it's only like 500,000. Okay, but I'm sitting here and I'm looking at these rates, and I feel like if we're going from like 31 to 32, 32.50 and to 36, with these numbers here on the top one, the capitalized interest, I feel like it's easier for the public to stomach going up $4.39 to $4.98 to $5.65 to $6.42 to $7.28 versus the other ones were going from $1.55 up to $6.50 to $7.80. So, I mean, ultimately, I know whenever we hit July 30th, it only goes up $2.88, and we'll theoretically possibly stay that going forward, but the difference between the 61.22 and 60.48 is so minimal. I feel like those initial jumps for the 26, 27, 28, and 29, I feel like is at least the 26, 27, and 28 is substantially higher. And I feel like we're going to, it's going to upset the public more with those ones than it is with the 438, 495, and 565. And again, I appreciate whoever did this chart adding those numbers so that I could take and see it.
I would just say, when I'm looking at this from a business owner perspective, I think you always want to finance less because that's just better business. That said, this is not we're not apples and oranges, that comparison. So I'm not going to use that way of thinking. I also agree with Councilwoman Reagan on the capitalized interest. And the reason why I brought this up in my one-on-one with Chris today, but then here it is in the presentation, and it's basically when we do it where we capitalize the interest, what you're doing is you're aligning the project cost with its useful life so that ratepayers who benefit in the future years from the project are also paying their fair share. That was my thought was, that's where I think it's more an equity issue for ratepayers, and I see the more equitable option being option one because of what I just said, it spreads out the project cost with its useful life. I'm also very conscious of everyone's financial situation, and $4 does matter. $3 matters, $2 matters, and I'm with Kimber. I would rather ease into this, and I think in this case it actually makes more sense, just in my opinion, to finance and go with the capitalized interest option 1.
If you look at it diagonally, it's almost identical. It's just we get to the higher rate like a little bit faster. Like 46.80, 47.52, 53.82, 53.94. Anyway, I don't know. In those 2 or 3 years, it just seems very similar.
Well, I also think it's an important distinction, and that's why I keep getting on you guys about you're saving the city, because I don't want anybody to misconstrue this, and I don't mean him in this room, but if anybody's watching thinking that, well, now they just cost us $8 million out of the general fund. I want to point out that it's $8 million, it's ratepayer money. So even if we save $8 million, we're not, the city of Hanford is not going to have more money to do other projects with. So I just think that's an important distinction to make.
Well, I think we all understand that the ratepayers are the ones that are paying this, and they're the ones. I know, but I'm just saying. I think we're all aware of that. I mean, I think when we talk about the city, we're talking about the residents, we're talking about the ratepayers, we're talking about the people that this is an enterprise fund. This is a something that has to fund itself. It's a service that's provided, and so I think we all know that it's directed, at the ratepayer. Like I said, we did this back in 23 or whenever it was when we adopted this, and here we are. I'm not even finished on my first term. We're back at it again, but that's frustrating because we had these discussions back then about were we going to be okay? Was this going to and knowing that it had been so long since it was done, and now we've added a lot to it, which I completely understand, but and I'm not opposed to, I want it to be the least impact on our ratepayers as possible. With the understanding that we know there's things that have to be addressed and have to be taken care of. So, I'm open to council's direction as far as what they, what's the best way forward.
I'm just looking at the difference in the annual increase. And that difference is $2.11. So if we have a baseline that, yes, the majority of this council is going to have that rate increase. Well, do we want to have whatever that rate increase is, or $2.11 more? Because that's the difference between the $6.50 and the $4.39. And when we look at it with just, I'm going to rephrase, not to say just, but that $2.11, is that worth the $8 million savings for our ratepayers over time? Or is, that gradual increase? Because ultimately, it's being raised $4.39.
Correct.
That $2.11 more, is that value to save our ratepayers $8 million over the term of this loan? And that's the way I'm looking at it, as is a $2. I don't look at it as a $6.50 increase. I look at it as a $2.11 increase, because it's going to be raised $4.39 regardless if we have capitalized or no capitalized. And should we go that extra $2.11 is what people are technically going to have to pay in addition to either save the $8 million or not save the $8 million.
Yeah, I get where you're. I guess my concern is when I look at this, and you look at. I mean, it doesn't matter what option you look at. You look at the very first column, the dark gray, July 1st, 2025, and then July 1st, 2026. And then under the option 1 or 2, it's not July 1, 2027. It's September 1, 2026. So, I mean, we're talking July, August, so 2 months later, 60 days later, we're going to do it again.
But it's still that $2.11.
I know,
increase.
and I get what you're saying. I'm just saying we just need to think. I mean, and I'm trying to. I want.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of the ratepayer.
This hurts. This
It
will
is.
hurt. This will hurt no matter which one we decide.
We know it's got to get done.
It has to get done, and it's that aging infrastructure, that conveyance throughout the city that
we all understand these get done, but back to my point, the people in September who are residents paying into this, getting their bills in September of 26 are paying for the residents who live here on July of 2030. So I don't think that is fair. Because people move and they come and they go, and I think it needs to be spread out equitably against, because then that way, as you're coming and you're going in the city of Hanford, you're at least, it's fair.
And it means that the people coming in later down the road are paying their
fair share. Correct.
Yeah, I get that.
I feel like that's the needle mover for me. And also, I'm not going to, people are struggling and they're having to make choices. And I just think we're not reading the room, and we have to be very, we have an opportunity to possibly help people in this time, so why not take it?
Well, I wouldn't say I'll disagree a little bit. I wouldn't say we're not reading the room. The reason they came back with these two different proposals was because we talked about a more balanced approach versus a kind of rip the Band-Aid off and then
I was talking
up
about
front.
could we just
So they did that for us. They gave us the option where it's spread out. And I love the comment you made about how the future impact. The future people could cover their fair share. So I'm okay with that. So if I'm understanding you correctly, and I guess I'm just asking for clarification, you support option one, the capitalized interest, not so much looking at the percent of increase over the next 5 years, but
I want to keep it at 13 and a half.
Out more.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why I said at the beginning, would I make this decision in my business world? I would opt not to, but that's not the same thing. Because if I save $8 million on interest at my business, then that means I have $8 million to work with, and $8 million spread out amongst all the ratepayers. You see what I'm saying? That is a benefit, yes.
Sure.
But I also think I guess I'm having to choose. I'm choosing hairs. I'm picking fairness, in my opinion, over savings.
Okay.
For me, it's option two, and the reason why for option two is that $8 million savings. I know it will have either way. It's going to have a little immediate punch, but it is to a point where, I have to reevaluate my own budget too. Sitting down, but it's that.
You were just talking about the $2.11.
The $2.11, because no matter what, it will go up to $4.39.
If you're looking at option one, single family right now, what their rate that they're paying is $30.95.
Sure.
To September 1st, at that time, it's going to go up almost $6.
And 89 cents, correct.
Well, yeah, but I mean the difference between $30.95 and $6, it's like $5 and I can't even think right now.
$5.94.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. Okay, versus $30 the other way, it's going to go on option two, it's going to jump up $8.05.
But there's still a $2.11
But
differential.
that's only the July to September. So they'll pay July, August will be lower, but from what they're paying right now to September, that's when it's really going to hit them.
And the differential between in 27, when we look at 27, that's $2.43, and then it goes down to $1.37. And then it goes into the negative where we're saving $2 and I believe, 75 cents or something. So it's a lot lower, and it starts going that 7%, that 5%. So I'm just looking at those. That's why I'm looking at weighing the option of we're saving the ratepayers $8 million for really that $2.11 differential.
I just see that 13% or 13.5%, 13.5%, 13.5% versus going up theoretically if you're looking at July 1st and September 1st, it will have gone up 25% if we do option 2.
Excuse me?
See, at option 2, July 1st of 2025, so on July 1st of 26, it goes up 5%.
Mm-hmm.
And then in September, it goes up another 20%. And in
So-
reality, it'd be more than that because that 20% is based on the July 1st. So it's 20% higher than the 1.05%.
So it's a 6.5% differential, but it's still that 6.5% differential is still that $2.11 differential. Mm-hmm. Because 5%.
July, what they're paying right now in June would have been $30.95.
Mm-hmm.
September 1st, they'll be paying $39.
Mm-hmm.
So they're paying $8.05 more.
But what I'm saying is that still it is $39. You're right, it's $8.05.
Hold on just a second.
Okay.
Do it the other way.
Does anybody, I guess, while we're having this discussion, is there a need to keep Allison and on, or are we okay to,
Let's keep them on.
okay.
It's going up 1.26%. From what it is right now versus what it'll be September 1st is 26% higher. That's how much it's going up September 1st compared with where we're at right now if we do number 2. I like 1.
But you're doing your real estate calculations.
I guess we're-
Okay.
It's the
you're
regular
looking-
calculations.
You're looking at where it is right now,
The right now it's it will
$30.95.
correct.
September 1st, one way it's going to be $36.89 versus the $30.95. So basically, in a 2-month period, or from July 1st, August 1st, September 1st of this year, it will go up on the second way, it's 26%.
Okay, so if you look at the top of the percentages, so in July 1st, from July 1st, there will be a 5% increase. And then it will go to a 13.5% increase. Okay, so a total of
18.5, I'll bite.
Okay. And then you have that 5% increase on the non-capitalized going to 20, so there'll be a 25% increase. 18.5 increase or a 25% increase. That's 6.5% difference.
It's actually on number 1, it's 19.19% difference. It's not 18. Because you've added the 5% in July and you're adding 13.5% based on the 105% that you got in July. You got to add the 5% in there first before you add the 13.5%. Because they aren't adding the 13.5% based on what they are now. They're adding 5% first and then 13.5%. But to me and everything else, I feel like it's going up more gradually that way versus the big chunk.
Okay,
Don't like it.
Instead of us having discussions, does anybody have any questions for staff? Okay, so now, I mean, we can continue discussion. I just don't want to have staff sitting here. I mean, it's good discussion, but I'm just saying, let's kind of get them out of the way now. Now they're, the discussion, and then
We do appreciate you.
Lou?
None of us like doing it. And I feel like we can't win either way.
None of us like doing it, but this is what we've been elected to do. So let's get a motion on the board and start moving.
How old is our current infrastructure? Just out of curiosity.
Well, some of it is over 100 years old. If you want to get down to that, to our some of our conveyance structures. The treatment facility, we have equipment there that's from 1948, 1948.
A good portion of homes were built in the 1950s, so looking at infrastructure 70 years.
It has never been changed, and it's from those 50s.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. I'm just thinking of just how am I going to talk to my constituents as well? Because either way, whether we capitalize it or or not capitalized or capitalized interest, it's still going to hurt, no matter what.
So we have a finance director. I'm looking at her. She's I just made her eyes pucker. What do you recommend? I do. I know. I'm sorry, and I don't mean to put her on the spot, but I think it's important that we also look at somebody that handles paying our bills every month.
Destiny, if you can go to the podium.
I think for maybe clarification on the issues that you guys were
great idea.
discussing, she might be able to provide some direction.
In this case, I do see it as kind of how Nancy addressed it, whereas in the business sense, where yes, the business decision, you do save $8 million, and then in Travis's opinion that he pointed out, the difference is between the 13.5 to the 20%. That's the difference that you're paying, that the taxpayers would pay extra in order to save the $8 million. And then you see that the first 3 years, 26, 27, 28, it is higher for the no capitalized interest, but then it goes down. So, and I would say too, a lot of our taxpayers are, the stats show that they are in their 30s. So I would assume that they would probably be here for a decent amount of time, and they would be the ones carrying these rates over the term of the loan. So in my opinion, I would do the no capitalized interest to save the overall $8 million. But obviously it's up to council.
Thank you. Well, is there any other comments? I'm looking. There's 5 of us up here. Lou, what do you have any thoughts?
I know it's something we don't want to do, but I don't think we have a choice. Again, the choice is which way are we going to go. And again, we save now or we save later, either one.
So I'll make a motion for option 2.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the table for option 2, no capitalized interest. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call. Item passes 4-1. Thank you. Do you need a break? Okay, so I've got a council member that's requesting just a quick recess.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh.
Do
Did I
we
miss something?
Well, that was the approval of the option. Do we require a separate action item?
Oh, for the Prop 218.
Correct.
Thank you, I'm sorry. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a recommendation for staff and consultants to begin a proper 218 process and set the date of the required public hearing for August 18th, 2026.
I'll second that.
We got a motion by Councilman Payne, second by Vice Mayor House. Madam Clerk. Read that. And the item to authorize staff to begin the 218 process passes 5-0.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Council.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
So I've had a request from a council member to take a very quick recess, so we'll do that for about 5 minutes, please. Back in session here. Next item on general business is D, Finance, mid-cycle 26-27 fiscal year budget review and additional appropriation of 1.25 million in the general fund, maintaining a balanced budget with the cost reductions of deferrals and increased revenues, and 10.6 million across all proprietary and other funds necessary operational capital needs, in the addition of 3 full-time equivalent or FTE positions, senior fire inspector, senior civil engineer, to the personnel master budget that are offset by revenues and projected funding. So we have our finance department here with us. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. That was a long one, huh?
It is. Try to
All right.
shorten it up a little bit.
All right, so we are heading into our mid-cycle review for fiscal year 27. Here we depict the budget cycle. We're in June of 2026, review of year 2. In March of 2027, we'll do mid-year of fiscal year 27. And then beginning January of 27, we'll start developing the budget, and we'll bring to you in June of, that should have said June of 2027. So introduction, mid-cycle review allows for amendments based on the recent activity and departmental requests for anticipated activity. Amendments to the general fund were limited to the core needs that support administrative, public safety, and essential services to the city, and those that are either offset by revenue or cost reductions. Other funds, including enterprise funds, don't necessarily need to be balanced, but are reviewed on a fund-by-fund basis to ensure that the fund has availability. We always keep in mind City Council's goals. These were recently updated in March of this year, so we now have an updated 26 through 29 strategic plan. And lastly, it's important that we maintain a balanced budget in the general fund in accordance with Resolution 20-29-R. This line graph depicts our current major general fund revenues and the outlook. First, we have sales tax, which is in the orange. It's gone through some ups and downs. In 25, it was slightly up. 26 projected, slightly down. 27, just a little bit up. Forecasted for fiscal year 27 is 15.6 million. Then we have Measure H in the yellowish color. We received our first deposits in fiscal year 25, and then obviously the first full year was fiscal year 26, and the projections for fiscal year 27 have slightly increased to 16.4 million. And lastly, we have property tax, which has steadily grown over the years, and this will remain steady by a minimum of at least 2% each year. This again summarizes the sales tax and property tax, but also compares to budget. For sales tax in the general fund, We have 17.6 million budgeted for fiscal year 27. However, projected is now at 15.6 for fiscal year 27. Property tax is budgeted at 16.8 million. However, we do see an increase of 18.1 million, which is helping the deficit in the sales tax. Also, it is important to note that the city of Hanford isn't alone in the deficit of the sales tax. A lot of cities are facing this, but we'll get to more of that later. Measure H sales tax budgeted was 18.5 and projected is 16.4. And this is also under budget, but an improvement from the last projection. So overall, we are unfortunately under budget in our major tax revenues. In the next slide, I wanted to continue some of our other general fund revenues. These are not the major ones, but the other revenues that make up the budget. We have our franchise fees of 1.4 million budgeted. They're projected to come in at 1.1 million. Which is a slight improvement from fiscal year 26. However, I think this was over budgeted based on numbers that we didn't have available at time of budgeting. So this would be more in line probably with maybe a smaller increase for fiscal year 28. Then we have transient occupancy tax. Budgeted is 770. Projected, we're thinking about the same. So not under budget, not over budget. As you're aware, TOT did not pass. So that $375,000 that could have helped in this situation to help balance the budget would have helped, but it didn't. Unfortunately, it didn't pass. And lastly, we have other revenues, 1.9 million budgeted and projected is 1.7. This is primarily cannabis tax. And again, the cannabis industry is seeing a decrease in revenues throughout other cities as well. So again, City of Hanford is not an anomaly in this situation. And altogether, these deficit in revenues, however, although not what we were hoping for, but it is offset by salary savings and benefits. So we are still balanced in that way, and that is why it's important that we continuing our top step budgeting with salaries to provide that cushion for times when economically we're not doing as well. It provides that offset for the deficit in revenues. General fund summary of changes. This is to show our changes in revenues, the changes in expenses, and showing that we have a total net balanced budget. Again, balanced, which is very important in aligning with the resolution. Some key additional appropriations that needed to be offset were the reductions in the fire revenue. Those revenues are now being transferred to the Building Safety Division, and I'll touch more on that later. We also have the Rec and Community Services. There's increased services due to the addition of baseball tournaments that plan to be began in, I believe, in the first few months of the new year. However, this increase is offset with revenues up here. And then in utilities, engineering, and streets, it shows an increase in appropriation. However, that's also offset. These are for surveyors services that we need to consult for, and they will be offset by developer reimbursements. So you'll see that up here. In order to achieve a balanced budget, we did have to reduce our fleet reserves by approximately 44% across the board. While that is a temporary reduction, and it was possible because the fleet reserve has a healthy fund, if in the mid-year we see that revenues are actually doing better than budgeted, then we could reinstate those original budget amounts and bring the fleet reserves back up to, again, the original amount. However, if at mid-year, if the revenues are not aligning with our projections, then we could also take a look at some of the additional appropriations that we gave or that we are presenting tonight, such as the rec and community services, and see if their revenues are aligning with their projections and possibly adjust those at mid-year to reduce the additional operational expenses and the revenues. And overall here you see the requested appropriations of $1.2 million. You'll see how that number ties to the Exhibit A with that shows the additional detail. Next here we have Measure H Fund, Summary of Changes for fiscal year 27. And as I noted earlier, there's a reduced projection in the sales tax of approximately $2.1 million. So now it's $16.4 million projected. The offset to that will be reducing the streets pavement rehabilitation capital project by $2.1 million to have a balanced budget. In this case, there are no requested appropriations. The reason why this pavement rehabilitation was selected is due to the significant amount of engineering and design that it takes in order to roll out these projects. So this is the most flexible project that we could reduce temporarily and defer until those revenues start until the revenues start coming in as to where we originally budgeted. Also, Measure H, this was reviewed with the Measure H Oversight Committee, and they also recommended staff's recommendation to reduce this pavement rehabilitation capital project.
Destiny, just for a point of clarification, so the amount of money that we have taken out of pavement rehabilitation, when we get to our next phase in our budget and we see that revenues are coming back, are we going to be changing this number and giving more money to pavement rehabilitation for our streets, or is it going to?
We can. It'll depend on what the revenue projections are showing at that time.
Say we're $1 million ahead, so would we be able to put $1 million back in?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Because if it's Measure H and we're $1 million more than what we initially anticipated, then we could go back and fund our road rehabilitation.
Yes, and for fiscal year 27, this pavement rehab is budgeted at $3.1 million. So there's still some funding left, even with this $2.1 million reduction.
Destiny. Council, I just want to add, too, in the staff report, we have in there that the public safety building is the big elephant in the room, right? So we really need to keep that in mind. I want to stress that for council and the public, that with that huge project upcoming, that is of top mind, so we need to be very aware of that cost. I would like to see us reduce or do a pay-go type strategy, so pay cash as much as we can up to construction, so we can reduce our financing costs and reduce interest, which then in turn leads to more funding available in the long run for the city. It'll stretch our Measure H dollars as much as possible. So just want to throw that out there for council to keep in mind as well.
This chart depicts our other funds summary of changes. This summary is more for illustrative purposes only. As we've stated, again, these are reviewed on a fund-by-fund basis, so they don't necessarily relate to each other in order to achieve a balanced budget. We're looking at each fund and making sure that these requests are aligned with operating conditions, updated revenue forecast, capital project needs, grant activity, and any emerging operating needs. The requested appropriations here is $10.6 million. We also have 3 FTE requested from 2 departments. 2 FTE coming from the Community Development Department, 1 senior fire inspector and 1 fire inspector. And this is what I was discussing earlier with the fire inspections revenue, along with some other revenue moving over to the Building Safety Fund. So these positions will be housed in a newly created fund called division called the Fire, Life, and Safety Division that is housed within the Building Safety Fund, which is an enterprise fund. So these funds will stay within the fund and used to continue its services. And these positions are needed to increase the number of fire and life safety inspections conducted throughout the city. Currently, it's being performed in the Fire Prevention Division, which only houses the part-time fire help. And so by utilizing full-time personnel, we believe that it should be more efficient with the inspections as well as the overall safety of the community. And they'll be able to kind of mimic what is being done in building safety currently and get that process going and overall more efficient. In the Utilities and Engineering Division, we're requesting 1 senior civil engineer. There's just a lot of growing capital needs, so this senior civil engineer is needed to work on those projects. With that being said, their time can be charged directly to those projects, so it'll be a near net zero impact to the general fund at the end of the year once all of those quarterly allocations are processed to allocate that person's time to those projects. Within the staff report, we also had the addition of a recommended council-approved practice. When the 10-year expenditure plan was created, the Parks and Rec and Community Services department were all one department. Since that expenditure plan was created, Parks is now separate from Recreation and Community Services. So for those reasons, this existing parks improvement and existing parks maintenance can be split, or we're suggesting it should be split to allocate 25% specifically for rec and community services, specifically for sports park complexes. And this would be an ongoing allocation, and within the budget documents, there would be like a sub-account here with the 2 budgets, and it would allow for transparency and also for the staff to be able to know their exact budget instead of sharing a budget. In this slide, I just want to give an overall Measure H update. Here for fiscal year 26, we have our updated projection of $15.9 million. Our current expenses are $5.7 million. Encumbrances, which are our PO balances that haven't been expensed yet, are sitting at $3.2 million. So available budget is $6.9 million. So even if the original budget was realized of 18.5, the fact that we are in year 1 and in year 1 of planning and rolling out projects, the overall projects and related expenses, we wouldn't have been able to fulfill the entire 18.5 million. Like I said, just because we're in year one. So we do have one remaining budget. So I'm projecting that this will be slightly less. And whatever this number is, that's what will be limited to rolling forward into fiscal year 27.
Items on year one have we checked off? You know, because we said we have our current expenses, the 8.995 million, that whether it's encumbrances or current expenses, do we have a list of like what we told the public, this is what we're going to do in year one, and this is what we have done so far, you know, just like an accountability checklist?
Yes, so that's within our budget documents. And as we're meeting with the committee, we're giving them that update on a quarterly basis. We'll also be having a recap meeting, this upcoming meeting in August. I'm going over all the things that were achieved in year one. One of the projects with the largest budget was the public safety building. It had a $6 million budget, but within the expenses, I think currently it was roughly about $1 million expensed, and that's just because we're still in the assessment phase. We're still acquiring properties. There's still property in escrow that needs to be paid out.
So we're investing this, or we're gaining interest off of this 6.9 because that's still available. Are we putting it off to the side?
So yes,
so that we can gather some substantial interest.
I wouldn't say substantial, but it's gaining interest. Okay. As much as interest as we can, with what the current rates are. So for fiscal year 27, we had budgeted 18.5. It's projected at 16.4. It is lower than budgeted, but it's still a better projection than fiscal year 26. So we are seeing an increase. And again, what our sales tax consultant advised is we're really in the first year still. We need to have multiple years in order to have better forecasts and more reliable information to make better projections in the future. Our current reserve is $3.2 million, and this is due to the amount that came in fiscal year 25 before the Measure H budget even began. Measure H didn't begin until fiscal year 26, so we were able to pocket away some of that money into reserves. So currently it exceeds the 15% of projected revenues that we had established within the plan. Yes. But as city manager stated, the public safety, we want to keep this reserves because we still don't know the full cost of the public safety building, and we want to have as much saved up in order to reduce the amount of financing cost eventually when we get to that point. And any costs leading up to the actual building of the project of the building. And overall, our financial outlook. So we will continue prioritizing a structurally balanced budget and maintaining adequate general fund reserves. Reserves are there to be used for one-time instances. In fiscal year 26, we have used approximately $3.5 million, with the largest project being the airport operations that was recently approved of $2.8 million. So I would project that we will see a reduction in our reserve balance when we have our audited financials for fiscal year 26. And we'll just need to keep that in mind throughout the year when we're appropriating additional monies for various things.
Are we talking the general fund reserve balance?
Mm-hmm.
So where are we currently at?
So when we ended fiscal year 25, I believe we were at $13.5 million. So this would reduce it to about 10 million. But it depends on how our operating overall does for fiscal year 26. So our general fund revenues minus our general fund operating costs, if there's a balance, that would add to the reserve.
So percentage-wise, because we've got a general fund reserve balance established at 35%. So percentage-wise, what do you think we're at?
So when we ended 25 with the 13.5, we were roughly at 28%. So I would assume it's maybe 26, 27% now. However, if general fund revenues exceed the general fund operating expenditures, that would add to the general fund reserve.
And we'll know that at the end of the budget cycle, correct?
We should know that in approximately December, January. We are also in our second year of our updated labor MOUs. So we'll be coming up again on employee negotiations for fiscal year 28 and 29. So we'll need to keep that in mind. But again, with the top step budgeting, there shouldn't be any issues with creating that cushion for unforeseen circumstances. We also will keep in mind, not only in fiscal year 26, but also in the development of the upcoming budget, just overall rising operational costs. We're still experiencing inflation. Other items, insurance, utilities, maintenance, contracted services, and technology services, just keeping an eye on those costs. We'll need to develop sustainable funding strategies for our capital infrastructure needs. As departments have stated over and over again, there's a lot of needs, but we have a limited amount of money. So we'll be, staff will be doing their best to get grants when we can, but otherwise we would need to be putting away a reserve amount. For example, the ACO is down to approximately $230,000. So council will need to decide in the next budget development if we want to start slowly funding that ACO up again or wait till we have one-time monies to fund it. But that's typically when we have general fund projects, that's where we pull from first. There's other pots of monies for specific projects like impact fee related projects or streets projects, like the TDA fund, the gas tax fund. Those can be used for those specific projects, but overall general fund projects typically is ACO or grants.
Justine, if I could jump in here for a second. It's 10:01, so
10:30.
Okay. We're beyond our limit, so how much time you want to give, or I mean, how much time do you?
The last slide.
Okay.
It'll depend on your questions.
Okay, so we'll extend. So consensus is at 10:30.
Sure.
All right. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Reiterating, we'll need to carefully phase our Measure H projects, keeping in mind the updated projections, and make sure that our projects align with the available revenues and preserve financial stability. We'll also need to monitor our increasing liability program cost. Our liability insurance has doubled. And so we'll need to incorporate long-term risk management expenses into the future budget planning. Our risk team will be bringing something to council later on in this year to help with those increasing costs and hopefully offset, well, not offset, but help reduce those liability costs. And lastly, when we're coming up for budget development for 28 and 29, we already conservatively budget, but we will project to even more conservatively budget due to just the ongoing sales tax volatility and economic uncertainty that we're facing right now. Does council have any questions? And listed as the recommended motion.
Council, any questions for staff?
I just want to say thank you. I mean, this budget is very thorough, very, we do have a policy of a balanced budget. And so when people say that we're, off the rails when it comes to the city's money, we have a balanced budget. We are very fiscally conservative
Yes.
in our projections, and I think that should be commended. When you're talking about the liability costs, that was one thing when I was going through the staff report, it gave me like this, knot in my stomach a little bit. Is that something down the road that we can negotiate those costs, those fees down, or are we just going to be on this gradual incline, on liability?
It's kind of a two-factor thing. So yes, we can do our best, and the risk team will be bringing back something for those litigation liability type costs. But also, we're in a risk-sharing pool with other cities. So
And that's the prism that we are in.
yes,
Correct. Okay.
so depending on how everybody does, it affects us. So we can only do so much to limit our costs.
This is just a tough time when we see the appropriations, and I mean, we don't have to. We can appropriate something, but we don't necessarily have to use that. Is that correct? When we're appropriating the 1.2,
Uh-huh.
I mean, there could be how things flow and everything. We don't necessarily.
Well, you're giving authorization to spend the money, but if revenues come in higher, then you're offsetting those costs.
Sure.
And so that's what we hope for.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for staff? Just a quick comment regarding Measure H, right? So, I know when Measure H went out and it was projected and all that stuff, now that we talk about it, we only have 1 year under our belt. So I say for all of us, we just need to kind of take a deep breath and just, we're still better off today than we would have been without it by far. We're getting a lot of capital improvement project stuff done, and it's on the projection to get those things done. So that's exciting to see, and we're still have a balanced budget. So all in all, when it's all said and done, we're doing pretty well. We'll at the end of the cycle, and as the end of the year funding becomes, if we can put that money back into the general fund reserve, we set number up where a little higher where it is. We'll address those issues, but. I think, overall, we're in really good shape. So thank you both for hard work.
I only have one comment. Thank you. And I thought it was a really smart way to, balance the budget, all the components.
Okay, seeing no other comments or questions, I entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the additional appropriations into the general fund and maintaining a balanced budget with cost reductions, deferrals, and increased revenues. Yada, yada, yada.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilman Payton, second by Mr. Martinez. Madam Clerk. Thank you, ladies. Okay, next item is council reports, general reports, brief informational reports from the city council and staff, including committee reports or reports city council related to meetings attended at city's expense. Council have any comments? I just want to make one announcement tonight, and I've received authorization to release the information, so I'm just going to provide council with it. Mr. Eric Forsey, who's been our information technology manager, has announced his retirement. Unfortunately, he'll be moving on to, I guess, a brighter future on July 2nd, I believe, is his projected date. 3rd? It's close. He's not here tonight, but I just for council and for everyone to know that He did notify me today that he is notified the city manager that he will be retiring. So we've got about a week and a half if he